So we have 4 o'clock, and this means that it's time to start our today's webinar. Before we are starting with our content, we would like to introduce ourselves. So warm welcome also from my side. My name is Lara Eding. I'm working in the product management area and happy to present you today our new updates, feature highlights, and some interesting topics around the area of software packaging.
Hello, my name is Marcin Torowski. I'm, since already few years already have been responsible for products and innovations at RayNet, especially RayPack Studio, but I'm also active in open source tweeting and blogging. So big fan of MSIX, and I'm happy to show a couple of news we have, not only for MSIX, but generally speaking, making product greater and easier to use for you.
That's true. So that means we have an expert on our side today. But before we are starting with our prepared content, I would like to give you an overview. First of all, we would like to start with the topic of our webinar today. It's smart packaging processes powered by RayPack Studio. We would like to give you some insights or talk about the current challenges in the packaging processes today. And afterwards, Martin will give you an insight or a live demo, present our solution and also the benefits. After that, we have some news and updates around our technologies, and we would like to start the Q&A session with you. And therefore, you can choose or you can use the question chat function and feel free to ask any question that you have. Okay, so let's start with a quick statement. Software packagers, CSOs, CFOs want to simple, secure, and cost-saving solutions and ensure that software packaging and deployment processes. So here you can see 3 main facts. It's regarding simple, secure, and cost-saving. So these are 3 words or 3 important key figures that we are working today in our business daily meeting, because we have different challenges around software packaging. And what are the challenges? For example, the software vendors are publishing day by day new version updates or patches, and you have to stay up to date with your portfolio, and you start at every time the software packaging to be sure that everything is on the updated state in your portfolio. But that means you have to speed up, because if there is an increasing patch, for example, because the software publisher released a critical vulnerability, you have to increase or you have to definitely speed up in timely manner to have your portfolio as well up to date, because there are some security reasons, or you have to fix this because there are cyber attacks around the world, and you have to be safe in this case. By meaning software updates, patches, vulnerabilities, and so on, there are also the relevant topic of security and quality, because you have not so much time to update all the software packages and you have to roll out everything in timely manner. But in the same case, you have to make sure that the security and quality topic of the software packages are fit. So that are the main challenges we think. So we are happy to know if you are thinking this as well. But we would like to focus this and explain you or present you our solution and how this fits to your daily business. But Marcin, do you have any comments to this around the challenges of packaging processes?
Well, I believe all of these topics are kind of interconnected. So packaging has changed in few recent years. So there is, first of all, basically a plethora of methods how you deploy the software today, and not only speaking about formats, but also the way of delivery. Speaking of some newest additions like Winget, but also NPMs and other stuff, next to deployment, next to different inputs. For example, the also pretty new addition to the family, MSIX or former EPIX packaging. All bunch of apps which are UWP formats, which also kind of change and shift the focuses. Instead of having too much time spent on like pre-configuration, we leave a lot of things to the user, to their out-of-the-box initial experience, like leaving some choices to them, making it the experience more like personal. In the same time, a lot of things happen around internet connectivity, web browsers, also email clients in kind of a desktop way, which make it even more important that they are delivered fastly, especially if there are any kind of vulnerabilities, 0-day or not, which means you want to have your environment be updated. You don't want to spend really too much time on packaging. And that, on the other hand, means that some patterns that we've been observing for years are like kind of getting less and less important. For example, like repackaging. People are asking, so do I need to repackage at all? Previously, I had to bring my software on Windows 7, 8, maybe 10, but nowadays, do I have to? Isn't it already enough reliability from the vendor side and legacy setups and stuff? Maybe should I continue without doing that? All of these questions, all of these kind of issues with speed of delivery, with frequency of updates, with also importance of being up to date, are kind of challenges which were important factors to us as we are planning the further directions where our product is going to. And today during the session, I'm going to also cover them during my live demo to show you like how we are trying to figure out how to make best of all these words, keeping it all in integrated user experience and ensuring that whatever technology are you using, whether it's a MSI or MSIX or legacy or maybe scripting or just file copy, that you are kind of feeling familiar within unified experience in our product.
Perfect. Thanks for that. And I think right now is a perfect moment to jump into the live demo because we are all interested in the new features and how we can solve or boost our software packaging processes.
All right, so just as a reminder, I'm going to present. I hope you see my screen now. Lara is going to stay in the background. We'll be observing the chat. If you have any questions, just feel free to ask. We're going to collect them, and at the end of the session, we'll be more than happy to answer them. Also, if you want to see something different, something which is more like close to what you expect, what you currently have struggles with, also let us know. If time permits, we're going to revisit them somewhere around end of our session. So it's my fresh copy of RayPack 7.3. RayPack is a core component of RayPack Studio. Today in the session, I'm going to focus mainly on RayPack as a packaging tool, but just be aware that there is more than that, and with the release of 7.3, we also brought many improvements and features into other products, like RayEval for documentation, RayQC for quality control. Also, RayFlow was a big part, so if you are a RayFlow user, make sure to check out our release notes. There are also a couple of interesting things also in regards of interoperability of products. Now, my RayPack currently is running from an MSIX container, which is also additionally some valid points. So you can get it as an executable to install all our products. You can get a native Windows installer. You can get MSIX. You can even go to Microsoft Store, get a freeware edition of RayPack, which we are going to cover at the end of the presentation. And finally, since Winget supports now Microsoft Store packages, you can also use Winget to bring RayPack to your experience and just start using it for free. If you need some more enterprise features, there's also a trial, but Lara will cover all that aspects at the end of our presentations. As an MSIX fan, I wouldn't expect anything else. So it's MSIX container running, and no really kind of true physical installation is required. Now, we're going to cover 3 blocks and then several smaller ones. So I'm going to start with a pretty new feature which we brought into the product, and the feature is called EasyPack. Like I was talking in the beginning, there's a number of different ways you can package. From our experience, however, all of them go kind of down to some basic choices between what vendors are actually delivering. And in most cases, it's like pretty simple choice. It's either you get an executable, so legacy setup, or you get a Windows installer or patch or transform, depending on the vendor. There's also MSIX. Frankly speaking, it's not that much popular, so things are really progressing slowly. Also, it's something that we observe in our projects, but that's also kind of the third choice. And then you can also build your setups if it's just a file copy operation, so just take a directory, deploy it, make maybe a shortcut and forget it. So we try to come up with some single experience which will bring them all down to a single wizard where you can define your choices. Just say, okay, I have that one, so tell me what is possible and guide me through which options I have and what is covered and possible with RayPack. So let's just try to make a quick demo. If you are already a RayPack 7.2, so previous version user, you will recognize that there is some cleanup in that menu. So we did some regrouping. Some options are better exposed if they are often used, and some of them just landed in a different place. But other than that, it's pretty much the old good place that you expected from the previous version. With a big addition, which is this button in the top, quick create. And I'm going to start this to come up with my first packaging without actually knowing first too much and be guided by the wizard. So like I said, we may start with a setup, whether XZ, MSIX, or MSIA, in which case the paths may be slightly different. You may still want to repackage if it's like an executable. You may want to create maybe a transform for Windows installer. You may maybe just edit directly your MSI installer. Not really a good practice, but still possible. If it's MSIX, you may decide for modification packages. But like I said, there is also an option to come with something completely from scratch, like saying, so I just need to deploy a few files. Or maybe you don't even know what to start with. You don't have sources at all. You just know, right, to fix some vulnerability on production, I need some new version of, say, 7-zip or Notepad++, in which case you may not have the sources, but still will help you out with package store. Now, we're going back to package store in a moment. Let me first focus on the first options. Like, I do have a setup, which is pretty much kind of a classic packaging. I do have a few downloads, so let me review. What do I have here? A bunch of executables, MSI. Like you can see, all of them are selectable, so it doesn't really matter what is my starting point. But after selecting your setup type, RayPack will offer you choices. Let's try to start with an executable. So a setup from HeidiSQL, and let's see what RayPack offers. And a couple of interesting things here. First of all, RayPack was able to do recognition of command line switches. Like, how do I install that particular product with a silent command line? For now, it's just shown for kind of your information. Like, you could use that. You could maybe create a quick wrapper, install CMD with these parameters. If there is nothing more you need, that's pretty much end of your packaging. If you want to go for the repackaging, that's going to be, however, a pretty important information, because for like bulk repackaging on virtual machines, for example, which RayPack also supports, you certainly want to automate them without any kind of blocking UI, dialogues, pop-ups, and stuff like that. So this functionality of RayPack to discover command line is pretty useful. And even better, it's kind of offline based, so it's no internet connection involved. We just look for a couple of signatures and we come up with command line switches, meaning that if you use RayPack in a kind of lockdown environment without internet, it's still also going to work. Other than that, a couple of basic details just to confirm it's HeidiSQL, some version. And now here are the options that RayPack offered. So like I said, we may go the full route through repackaging. Repackaging of SQL-based backend may or may not be a good idea. So again, this all depends on your enterprise guidelines. Do you want to really go and make an enterprise-ready MSI? Maybe not. Still, if going that route, you have options. Depending on your edition, it may be a local, it may be a virtual machine-based repackaging. So I do have 2 machines, and I could select one of them. And well, if I press that, there's still going to be a few choices I need to answer. So like it's okay, my Heidi SQL. Again, confirmation. It's a silent command line that is going to be used in if you want to do repackaging. Still, you have an option to add some more setups. If you want to make some bulk job, you can even add a complete folder. For example, all my downloads or all my projects, let's convert them to MSIX format or to MSI repackaging. So a bunch of options here. I'm not going to really go through too much details, just showing you like how this looks here. Command line, options to reboot your machine or maybe not, or do it maybe automatically. You can select what do you want to do that with that. Is it MSIX you want to achieve? Is it MSI? Is it the new edition Pack Designer MSIX project that we also brought in this 7th release? So a lot of choices. Normally they are all defined per profile, so you just set them once up and your Packbot is ready to use. So that's just one of the options you can go to come up with a working Windows installer ready to be deployed. Let's revisit a couple of other of them. So I'm going to cancel that. And instead of doing the repackaging, we could also use wrapping. Wrapping gets more and more popular, and it's also kind of what we observe. It was like back 8-9 years ago, wrapping was kind of evil, so everyone was doing repackaging to MSI. And however, today, with introduction of several different toolkits and PowerShell App Deployment Toolkit being kind of primary and most probably popular of them, wrapping is not really considered that bad. It's actually super fast, quick, reproducible. People are pretty much familiar with PowerShell. The IDE is good, Visual Studio Code or whichever you use. So many projects actually use that. There are a couple of enterprise considerations here, like many companies have some particular templates or some branding guidelines saying that they need that and that registry in that place, but we have it all covered here. Let's just go and see how this works. So I'm going to say my Heidi SQL should not be repackaged, but should be wrapped. And then later choices are, for example, to push to Intune or just simply create a package that you can push to any deployment system of your choice. There are a couple of details that I need to still provide. So this wizard just starts again on my setup that I wanted. Here is again to confirm name, vendor, version, language. They are all read automatically. You can still correct if you need. For this quick demo, I'm going to go over convention, over configuration. So I'm not really willing to change too much, just go with the details. So that's the place exactly where the silent command line is handy. And you can still add your custom command line parameters if you need something extra. If you need any extra step, which is not possible from vendor point of view, you can still add them, and I'm going to show you how to do that. For the time being, it's just super easy. I'm not really changing anything. I'm just pressing next and next to go with defaults to show you how fast is it to get a working PowerShell App Deployment Toolkit with help of EasyPack and Pack Wrapper. So that's just a confirmation step. Again, I'll be showing something about Intune in some later part of my presentation. For the time being, just stick to PSADT, and that's just going to create my package, which installs silently, and that's it. So a few clicks, really no configuration at all, and my package is ready. Before I press finish, I could actually review that. So let's take a look. It's what you might expect from a PSADT. Some PS1 file controlling the installation. What is it? PS1 controlling the installation, a bunch of files, deploy app, and that's pretty much it. So nothing really fancy. Any PSADT author will recognize the pattern. Now, RayPack offers, however, some extra steps. So this was just pretty easy, just one single one-liner to install a setup. But I already mentioned, usually you want something more, like put my license file there, or maybe make a cleanup, remove something which you don't want on a desktop, shortcut and stuff like that. So if you press finish, RayPack will actually open your setup again to remember. It's a PS1 file. It's a native PS80 toolkit template. And this is the place where RayPack kind of visualize what your installer is doing. Not only visualize, but you have also a choice of changing things, whether from the advanced or visual view, without actually knowing a bit of programming or nothing about PowerShell. It's just all visual driven. So again, it's our product. We can still take a look at some metadata. If you want to change them or edit existing scripts, that's absolutely possible from here. The icon and some branding information. And finally, there is just a file. So nothing really fancy. It's just a setup. Now, for install, repair, and uninstall, it's a visual designer where you just simply see it's getting some executable. And you can always switch between an advanced view and visual view. So if you are more like programming in PowerShell, that's the place where you can see a highlighted code with syntax highlighting and all these sections which kind of build PS80 template. And I'm just going to scroll down a bit. So this is pretty much where my setup is started with parameters. Nothing really fancy so far. Let's just add some registry key. Again, I'm going to add an action called registry, set registry. As you can see, there are a couple of different types. And if, again, you are coming from PS80 world, you will certainly recognize this pattern over there. So RayPack works with any PS80 template. If you have any custom function that you build for your projects in the past, we'll be just happy to take it over, and you will still get some visual-based editor of your action. So that's a pretty big value added here. You don't have to rewrite or reinvent the wheel if you already have something in place which is working and proven in production. But let's, like I said, set a registry. I'll just do some random change here. So software ID SQL and value name called installed, and then set to 1. So depending on what your installation routines, branding, guidelines, and so say, it might be something different. What I wanted to achieve with that is to show you that you can go through the complete installation process visually without touching a line of code, yet still when switching to advanced view, we can see that RayPack creates all the necessary pieces of code. And even better, again, if you are a programmer, you could maybe use that to add some extra logic here. So like, I don't know, it's 64-bit, a variable, if you want to check for something. So I'm just going to move this to that place, just some manual editing. And if I go back, you get this completely visualized. So you can open any kind of PS80 project with Pack Designer, Pack Wrapper, and have its content visualized, change things, save, and you're ready to go without actually touching coding, without touching any programming, without, as a matter of fact, knowing what PowerShell is and how this works. Also in Pack Wrapper, we did a couple of changes to make it simple to configure even the tiniest details about like branding, logo, and look and feel. So for example, if I go to interaction, which is now completely changed in this release of RayPack, you can see that there is a banner, and you can change that to be a banner of your choice with your logo. All of these things that you do in RayPack are profile-based, meaning that you can define your global profile, which defines this is my branding, this is my logo, this is my, I don't know, some register which always should be set at the beginning, and RayPack will just keep up and take whatever you define as a template. So similar story about reboots, which also got improved in that. But again, main point is that Pack Wrapper makes it super easy to work with PS80 files without actually knowing too much. This concept of splitting between visual and advanced view is already something which have been pretty well known in other areas of RayPack, like in Pack Designer for MSI, for MSIX projects. So we kind of follow the same strategy. Have something which is easy to use, easy to jump in, easy to learn, and yet offer these possibilities for IT pros. Right, so what we did with EasyPack was an executable. Again, I could revisit that place here.
Martin, before you're starting the next topic, we have an interesting question regarding the pack wrapper. Is there a way to change the wrapper to our own instead of using PSADT?
So basically, RayPack supports anything which is PSADT derived. Means that if you have anything custom built on top of that, which just has some minimal kind of resemblance to the original, like it has the section for install and uninstall, and it has the original functions in place, plus maybe your own, RayPack will be able to handle that.
Perfect. Thanks.
All right. So, like I said, using the same principle, you could maybe start with an MSI, and in which case we'll show some different options. You can open a Windows installer package. You can create an MST transform for that. Also, if you have some specific branding in place, maybe again registry or a property, you could automatically inject that into your new project, which is then global and shared across all users using the specific profile. Firefox is an example of an app which is just a thin wrapper over actual executable, so it's not really a true MSI. In that case, you could actually go over repackaging. Not really recommended for MSI setups, but if it's anyway a thin wrapper, then why not? So because of that, also that option will be shown by RayPack. You could wrap that package. So PSADT has some great flexibility, whatever the source format is, executable or Windows installer, or maybe even MSIX or file copy, you could have the same interface, which is going to be important once you import your packages into deployment system. So having the same command line kind of takes extra burden from a system administrator or from your connectors to find out, okay, so how do I install exe, how do I install MSI, and all the questions like that are not really relevant. They are kind of wrapped, so you always have the same command line regardless of your sources. And finally, you can create Intune package, but more about Intune we'll be discussing soon. So this is like basic idea about EasyPack. Let the user be guided through the process of package creation, select and show all the options. And one of the hidden perks that we did with EasyPack is that we kind of exposed some options which were previously there, but not that kind of easy to discover for RayPack users, like creation of empty transform or creation of modification packages. They were out there, but it was not really possible to do it with one click. And now all pretty much daily use cases, every simple routine that you do every day is out there, whether it's MSIX, MSI, or execute. Still, what I was doing was some kind of way of packaging. So I had my sources, I had to go through, find out maybe installation switches, command lines, have the sources, first of all. Now, there is also an easier path, and that's also another of big feature highlights on this release. So package store has been already in place in RayPack, but recently we did a lot of also internal optimizations and improving the scope and coverage in the store. So we could also start with our quick create. There are some other different choices to do, but again, if you do not have sources, it's going to start package store wizard. It's a separate service, so you can have opt-in for package store in your RayPack installation, and it offers currently around, counting all versions and business platforms, if I recall correctly, it's slightly more than 25,000 different packages. And for all packages, you have silent and install and uninstall command line strings, some more options which might be relevant, like switching off reboots, like disabling some annoying pop-ups, depending on the app. Some apps have more, some have less. Let's make a quick something pretty simple and small. I don't know, maybe 7 zip. Where's my focus here? 7 zip. So this should show me that there is a 7 zip available for me, and I get if I see correctly, 26 different versions, variants. So you have a choice like which version or which platform. Let's try to again pick something from that list. So I'm going to take, okay, let's take version 22, nice number. Platform 64 or 32-bit, doesn't really matter. Let's stay with 64-bit. Again, depending on software, there may be more or less versions. And again, to stress out, I have no source at all. Package store will make sure that the sources will be there in right format, and that depending on my choices, that a proper deployment target will be created. So in case of 7-zip, I guess it must be already a MSI project. So that means I do have, oops, package store not available. Interesting. We probably have to speak to our IT admins. Or
so now you can see we are really live.
Oh yeah, it's not pre-recorded, as you can see. So we'll try to maybe revisit that in a moment. Hopefully, it's just a quick thing. Let me then say a word about the Intune integration, which I wanted to cover after that. We had some basic Intune integration in RayPack 7.2, but in 7.3 we actually wrote all these loose points to a solution where whether you are doing PSADT, MSI, or MSIX deployment, you actually get a choice and you can publish to Intune. I already do have a pre-configured environment. So my dummy Intune should be there. And let me maybe pick again the Heidi SQL that I just did and take a look. So I'm again in PSADT mode. If I go to File, Deploy, there's an option to push this into Intune. For a few projects in RayPack, you can also have a choice to build so-called Intune Win package, which is a file that you can send out to your administrators. That file can be then imported into Intune console, and then with a few metadata, some of them automatically can be read from Intune Win, you will get your deployment. The more like end-to-end approach is to go through the deployment wizard. So again, if you have Intune deployed, you can press that. It's going to open a wizard. Some of the information might be still required or not, so you can provide privacy URL, information URL. It's more like an Intune specifics for the time being. The publisher, description, and name are otherwise automatically suggested by RayPack. Also, the uninstall and install command line switches, like I said, a big advantage of using PSADT would be that it's the same interface. So in that screen, actually, it doesn't matter whether the original product was executable or MSI. It's always going to be wrapped into a PSADT wrapper. Exit codes can be defined as well. And once ready, you can also specify on which operating systems and platforms it should run. So the end result of that would be that, basically speaking, you will get your package in Intune. Completely with recognition rules, with all bells and whistles that Intune supports. In case of MSI, it's pretty simple. I mean, product code is used globally as a recognition way. For executable setups, RayPack will take and do some heavy lifting and will make sure that a recognition key is available. So it will do actually all the work in behind for you. You don't have to really care about. So this is like what the Intune deployment wizard looks like. And like I said, right now it's available from pretty much every place, whether you speak about MSI or PSADT. Okay, not quite sure if I can relaunch Package Store. There are a couple of other things which we may also cover. So, like I said, there are different formats which are out there on the market. You can do MSI, MSIX, or repackaging. Whatever your choice is, RayPack will get you covered. So we are continuing to invest in all the areas. So in MSIX, for example, which I'm going to maybe quickly open. So I do have here a sample MSIX project. Again, same principle. There's a visual and advanced designer, and the menu structure is slightly new in this new build. But what is important is that we added some requested features that users were asking for. For example, now it's possible to deploy fonts with MSIX. So it would be just as easy as just importing a file in a folder, a TTF, and then you go to fonts and say, all right, so I want to have that font during my MSIX installation, and the MSIX engine takes care of installation, but also it will do proper cleanup once your setup is removed. So that's one of the additions that we did in this version of RayPack. Another one is, so we already had fix-ups and scripts. The interesting part is that you could add fix-ups which do some pre-launch scripting, like a PowerShell, something which is supported natively by PSF, so a launcher for MSIX. But what is even more interesting is the ability to actually edit resources. For example, if you have a script or a file that you want to edit, there is a config.json, for example, you can right-click and say that you want to edit that file. So without kind of unpacking your MSIX, changing something and saving back, which takes time, is basically error-prone, you could do it directly from RayPack. So that's just one of these little nicey shortcuts that we did, which make everyday work easier and faster, and making sure that there are less mistakes and so. Next to MSIX, there are also a lot of different minor optimizations and minor features added. All of them are listed in our release notes, so I really recommend to check it out. We have tons of changes for dependencies, for application properties, some new stuff that MSIX added recently. So go and check it. The same story applies to the Windows installer alpha. So in this release, we did also many different optimizations to ensure that the daily workflow is slightly faster to work with. For example, if I go to a MSI file, do I have something, okay, like Revo? We were working on making sure that the component view has some more options. For example, you can manage now the INI and environment from that one single place. So it makes it also super convenient if you are really experienced with MSI to go there and check which resources belong to which component. Right, so I guess that would be more or less like a high-level overview. So again, to sum it up, for us was important to make sure that all these basic directions, whether it's repackaging or whether it's producing Windows installer files, patches, or MSIX, that all of them get their attention, that you can maybe today stay with the Windows installer. If it's needed later on to switch to MSIX, you can do that, and you will be just working in your familiar environment, the UI, which you know, all this split between visual and advanced designer, all of these are integrated into a single IDE, which means switching from one format to another is much easier. Also, if you do repackaging, you have choices. You can create some neutral formats. So today you may repackage to MSI, and maybe tomorrow from the same sources, without repeating repackaging, you can come up with MSIX. Also, the automation is important. I'm not going to show in the webinar, but again, you can check it out, take our user guide and find it out. There is a PowerShell module, there is a command line tools for RayPack, which do automate a lot. You can even take the command line tools, which do not require a license at all, do the repackaging on a remote machine. So a lot of things are possible. If you want to use package store, you can also use the REST APIs and various codes to also get your content automated without even starting the UI. So a lot of attention has been also put on that aspect in the product. All right, maybe just as a final word, so that was pretty much RayPack. We can maybe during Q&A session discuss about some other options and choices. Let me just quickly also revisit one other place, which is RayQC Advanced. It's our compatibility checker and conflict resolving tool. We did add a support for the newest version of Windows 11, which means you can now go and see that the packages can be tested against, I go to quickly, system readiness, that you can test around against Windows 11 22H2, September 2022. So also here we are continuing to bring new things to ensure that you can continuously check for any kind of regressions or incompatibilities. You can still use RayQC obviously to test conflicts between your own products, MSI based. And there is also kind of maybe a sneak preview of what's coming on next. If you have Citrix app layering in place, you will be happy to see some update in upcoming version that Citrix layers will also be fully supported by RayQC Advanced, which will kind of round up our portfolio for Citrix app layering users. You can create Citrix layers with RayPack, you can edit them with our built-in editor, but also you will be able to test them from RayQC Advanced. Are there any conflicts and how do I solve them? All these questions are going to be answered. Not really something that I'm going to show, but just mention again, all of this you can find in our release notes on our website, so make sure to check it out. If you have Rayflow in place, there is a better integration between the products, especially if you use workflows like Packbench. You can, for example, synchronize the content easily and decide and deconflict any potential sources like changes in Rayflow or changes which were done locally. For RayEval, we have a couple of experience improvements, for example, spell checker or ability to work with different date formats. So all these nice little things which are really helping in daily business. All right, let me quickly go if my internet let me go again through the store. If not, we'll be then jumping to a Q&A session. And again, you can test it out later at your own discretion. Make sure to do it 7-zip again. 7-zip. No, it's still somehow, or maybe it's some proxy issue. I need to check it out. So
yeah, so I think we have also a recorded session dedicated for the package store topic. We will send you this as well as the PowerPoint slides and this recording.
Okay, so I'm pretty much done with live demo. Again, I'm going to keep it open. It might be that during Q&A, some important aspects will be still continued and picked up. A couple of topics, but again, just to sum it up, what we've been trying to do with RayPack and where do we bring RayPack Studio to, what's our goal and overall arc for the product. In this release, some big release was about discoverability and making sure that daily workflows are well covered and easily accessible. So all the features around EasyPack, repackaging and guided wizards, creation of new content, creation of packages from scratch, all of them are covered by this new wizard. Then for MSIX, all powers, better experience, new features like phones, like script editing, like general file editing, and also a bunch of different options for dependencies management, for application management, and some more. Plus a cleanup and general refresh of things and screens so that it's even easier to work with MSIX. Features are grouped and it's just making more fun to work with MSIX. Package store, which somehow was not available during that demo, but it's a great way to start with a package, set up a few options. Package store will ensure sources are downloaded and will create a standard Intune compatible or any deployment system compatible application, which you can then import either automatically or manually, or you can also continue and edit like PSADT, what we did with, for example, exe-based setup. With automation and also many minor and useful changes in RayPack, it's possible to make less errors and do things quickly in lesser time. Also, Other things like, for example, spell checking in RayEval makes sure that the content is just valid, that you don't do any extra proofing, and it just again ensures that you are working unobstructed and delivering the results, not spending time on technical details. Intune was a big key highlight. So whether PSADT, MSIX, MSI, or any kind of input format that RayPack supports, you can use our Intune wizard to deploy automatically with all bells and whistles, all heavy lifting done automatically by RayPack. And finally, when using RayFlow and PackBench, you have a seamless synchronization between both. And RayFlow also got its own release 7.3 with this one. So we really also encourage you to check out the new version and also its release notes. There's slightly more than I did in this webinar, and make sure to also check them all out.
Great. Thanks a lot for the presentation. Before we are starting the Q&A session, I would like to cover 2 more topics. And one of them is the package store. So at the moment, sorry that we can't present it to you. So the integration into RayPack directly, but we will send you the recording afterwards. But if you're interested in the topic of package store and the pre-configured packages, you are happy, you are welcome to use our online store. So just typing in www.packagestore.com and you have the possibility to choose your dedicated software packages from over 10,000 packages and download this. You can configure it and afterwards add it to your deployment system. There's a trial license, so keep your time, and if you need some support, please contact us. And the second thing is we are as well in the Microsoft Store. So if you're interested in RayPack Studio, or in this case dedicated for RayPack, you can search for RayPack in Microsoft Store. You can download it, you can try it. There's also RayPack Express Edition. So you have the basic functionalities and you can directly work with our technology. Great. I think we can start with the Q&A session, and during the presentation, Martin, we have a lot of questions. And the first is about PackWrapper. So is there a possibility to save your PackWrapper project in RayFlow?
Save PackWrapper project in RayFlow. So basically, RayFlow has a built-in connectivity. So you can either call like RayPack from RayFlow, in which case RayPack will just get information. Here is the project, open it, and whatever changes you do will be just saved directly at source. Other choice would be to build to RayFlow. Actually, I will have to check if it's already in publicly available builds, but we also have been doing a lot of things about it. So I think this might be not there directly to like create a project from scratch and save it RayFlow, but again, there are a couple of different ways to handle that. RayFlow is also kind of flexible, so different users do things slightly differently, and to actually answer fully that question, I would have to more like kind of see the background and like where you come from, so where do you save your projects, what configuration of RayFlow is. But basically, there are ways to achieve that.
Pretty sure. So we will come back to you and schedule a specific session to answer the question in detail. The next one is it possible to use your own naming convention for package names? I think it's also regarding PackWrapper.
So our approach to that is RayPack is a general purpose tool for editing. If you want to force particular naming conventions, like for your folders, like for your project files, I would highly recommend to use RayPack in combination with PackBench. We didn't spend time today with PackBench, but it's more like an enterprise workflow which can control all other Ray Suite products, including RayPack, also RayEval and RayQC, do actions fully unattended or with the UI. And Packbench has actually a way to force RayPack to use some concrete guidelines. For example, put my project in that particular path, use the following name for the project, maybe even force some particular profile to be used to actually contain even more settings. So there are pretty a lot of options, which and the answer would be yeah, but make sure that you control the complete process from Packbench.
Perfect. The next question is it possible to control RayPack using command line arguments?
Yeah, certainly. So RayPack comes with CLI, just I think it's called RayPack minus CLI. There is some inline help, so we can just start it. You can do repackaging, you can edit projects, you can apply your automation snippets, like some popular choices, active setup, properties, and stuff like that. You can build, you can create snapshots, so a lot of different options. And also there is a PowerShell automation which you can use to, for example, read things from projects, transform them, maybe save back, and again update. So yeah, there are basically two different choices to automate RayPack, PowerShell or CLI.
Great. So next is, can I store the packages from the shop directly in my deployment system?
I think that Lara already answered that. Yeah, so we create pretty much a general purpose PS-ADT format, which you can use with, like, I would say virtually any deployment system which just supports calling anything on Windows. So whether it's Intune, whether it's ECM, SCCM, or RMS UEM, you are good to go, and there's no big deal with the same interface.
Great. So nice question. Is there a webinar planned for Packbench? So very interesting. We will think about it. Maybe we can address this topic to, yeah, answer a lot of questions.
We probably would have to have a few like videos. Like Packbench is so much enterprise oriented, and we try to keep these webinars more like super generic. But it's a great, actually, idea. We need to think internally how can we make Packbench more like discoverable.
Great. And I think that's the last question. So in which edition is EasyPack available?
So EasyPack is basically available for every edition, also including the free one. Obviously, depending on like edition, there may be some more or less features. For example, if you have Enterprise edition, you have Enterprise repackaging, in which case EasyPack will let you go through that route. But otherwise, that guiding through and discoverability is pretty much generic. So regardless of edition you have, you will just simply have it once you upgrade to RayPack 7.3.
Great. So there are no more questions coming in. Therefore,
there was one pre-formatted, but somehow the content is clipped. I don't know.
Maybe. Okay, perfect. So yeah, thanks for joining our webinar. And if you have some questions or do you need a dedicated session with us, please feel free to contact us at any time. We are on LinkedIn. You can find our email addresses and so on in the PowerPoint that we will send you after this webinar. Thanks a lot, and yeah, have a nice day.
Thank you.